This week on Brandon's World, because it was Thanksgiving week, because we had so much NFL going on, because we had so much going on in relative to WWE Survivor Series, and because I thought the Ohio State Michigan game and rivalry weekend with the Iron Bowl and Georgia Tech, Georgia, Ohio State facing Michigan with essentially none of their personnel back from a year ago. I thought this was going to be the most lopsided, most boring, most uneventful rivalry week potentially in the history of college football. And I was wrong. We talked about it a little bit with my debate partner on championship rings, Josh Unger. We kind of said there was little to no anticipation for people not on the side of Ohio State and Michigan, like myself. It's like, yes, it's the rivalry, but Ohio State is probably, if not the most talented, the second most talented team in the country, right behind Texas. They just took apart Indiana. They're going to dominate Michigan. And two missed field goals later, couple Will Howard bad interceptions later, and 13th and Michigan later. And all of a sudden, after an 8 overtime victory, which don't even get me started on the gimmick that has turned into now college football overtime. Of course, Georgia defeating Georgia Tech, Texas barely surviving Texas A&M. We now are set up for an interesting conference championship weekend with, of course, Penn State and Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, among others. I have been adamant that when it comes to college football this season, I thought college football was going to be the most fun season we've ever had. The Big Ten SEC expansions. I thought that NIL, the transfer portal, were finally going to come into play. I thought, there'd be a chance that we could get a two-loss team or a three-loss team in the CFP with a 12-team playoff. That certainly has come to pass as teams in the SEC like a Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech now even have players, a team like Indiana that can transform their entire program in 1 year due to the NIL and due to the transfer portal. But I also thought the 12-team playoff would sort of make rivalry week less relevant. And I'm right on that. To me, I think the fact that Ohio State losing to Michigan, the fact they're not going to be in the Big Ten championship game, and the fact that they are pretty much automatically qualified to be in the CFE is wrong. And again, I know I'm from Ohio, I'm from the Cleveland, Ohio area, but I am not an Ohio State fan. I am a college football fan. And to me, the 12-team CFP, this just shows us way too much. And I said this after, Ohio State defeated Penn State a couple weeks ago. I said it after Alabama defeated Georgia, and obviously Alabama goes on to lose to the likes of Vanderbilt and Tennessee and Oklahoma, which put a detriment to their season. But I just think 12 teams is way too much. Yes, there was the whole incident, Michigan trying to plant the flag. Obviously, this meant way more to Michigan. They know their season would be defined as a success, the way Georgia Tech, who pretty much blew that game to Georgia because, again, Carson Beck, you can't really trust him. He's very hot, he's very cold. And I thought that, Georgia really was outplayed for most of the game, the way they are most of the regular season games this season. The best game they played this year was against Texas on that Saturday night. Now Texas here in a revenge spot in the SEC championship game, looking for that bye in the CFP. However, you can make an argument that you don't want the bye because there's not a reseeding factor in the CFP. And I made this argument when it came to Ohio State. If they were to beat Michigan, they probably should have wanted to lose to Oregon. That way they could play Boise State and whoever else in the first round of the CFP, and then that would be a home game in Columbus. But as I told you, the committee rankings going into the final week of the season used to matter. Now they really don't matter until we see the final reveal on Selection Sunday. Again, I think that it is essentially a two-conference sport. I don't buy Miami and Cam Ward that much. I don't really buy Boise State, whoever wins the Mountain West, whoever wins the Big 12, etc. I think it's an SEC Big Ten see up, lose here. I do think Texas and Ohio State are still probably the two most talented teams in the country. But I think this weekend, rivalry week, really showed you again what NIL, what the transfer portal meant. And if you don't have a quarterback like Ohio State, I don't care how talented your roster is. Again, I thought they were very conservative against Michigan. I thought Chip Kelly and even Joel Klatt on Fox alluded to this on the broadcast. I thought they needed to be more aggressive throwing the football down the field. They did not do that. But I do think that, it's like we lost to Michigan, and I know you Ohio State fans are upset, but it's like you're still in the college football playoff, and people want to fire Ryan Day, and I completely understand it. That was an inexcusable loss, but at the end of the day, if you win the college football national championship, this is what I don't understand. Is your season a success only if you beat Michigan, but you lose in the final eight of the CFP? Is it a failure if you lose to Michigan but win the college football national championship? That I don't understand. But I would have loved to see the CFP even stay at four, if not expanded to six. That way these regular season games mean much. That way Penn State is on the fringe of getting in. Penn State would have to win the Big Ten championship game to get into the CFP. Now they don't. Now they're essentially in the CFP. So at this point, all we care about is seeding. I'm not saying the college football playoff is not going to be good. I'm not saying these are going to be, all blowouts or whatever, though they certainly have the potential to do so. I just think the sport has turned into a little bit of a mini March Madness, where it's like March Madness. The reason why I do not talk college basketball in the regular season is because it literally does not matter. How many times the last couple of years have we seen a team like North Carolina State or, an Oklahoma State, a 10 seed, or whoever have you, a 14 seed? Be under 500 in the regular season, win their conference tournament, and go on to the Elite Eight or the Final Four in March Madness. It's happened, the last couple of years, even though last year was more of a chalk year. I do feel that way now about college football moving forward, where it's like before, it was like if you have one loss, even by 3 points, if you're not a top school in the country, that's it. Your season's over. And for some of these teams, they could go undefeated and have no chance at the CFP. Where now it's like even you talk about Georgia. It was like, well, if they lose to Georgia Tech, they're probably still in the CFP. People are trying to talk themselves into a three-loss Alabama team who all three of their losses, they have looked horrible. Jalen Milroe has been on and off at the quarterback position all year long. They're trying to talk themselves into even being a top 12 team in the country. And I just think that's wrong. So I don't know. I think college football is in a weird space right now. It was a weird rivalry week. I don't trust any team in college football, and it's what I've said ever since Georgia knocked off Texas. Because again, going into that game, the way Texas was playing really didn't matter if Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning was under center. That team looked like the most dominant team in the country. And ever since that game, Texas has not played their best football. And it seems like to me, any given Saturday or Friday or, whatever day they're playing, we got college football essentially all Thanksgiving long. Now in today's 2024 society, it just seems like to me, it's any given week, any given play. It's becoming more NFL like in a way, which I like, except it's a 24/7, 365-day recruiting cycle, which again, I think it's harder to be a college football coach now than it is being an NFL coach. So, some of the elements I like, some of the elements I don't like. But I think here as we move into the CFP, I think the regular season has been diminished. I would have loved to see a better Michigan team go into Ohio State and you have two versus three or one versus two or whatever have you. Maybe that hyped up the rivalry for me. But for Ohio State, this was arguably the most disappointing game of the season by any team. And now Texas has a chance to get revenge on Georgia. Georgia, that incredible comeback against Georgia Tech, though I still don't trust them. We'll see what Clemson does in the ACC championship game. Like, I just think it's a free for all mess right now in college football. If you're a fan of the sport for a long time, let me know what you think of all these changes. I'm pretty indifferent over it. And to be honest with you, like I said, the last few weeks, it sort of just feels like these games are being played just to be played, but they don't really have true meaning or true stakes to them because all of these great teams are still going to be in the CFP. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.